Hey folks, Dave Brown here with the New Populist. Thank you again for joining me. It is December 2nd. We are approximately 6 weeks away from January 20th when Donald Trump takes office, and that day could not come soon enough. But although he is not currently president, it seems that the entire world revolves around him. And, that is who Trump is. He is always the center of attention. So every day he makes a comment on Truth Social, or he picks something new for his cabinet, and the entire world reacts, some positively, some negatively, but there is a reaction. And when it comes to some of his cabinet picks, a lot of people are freaking out. People who are ostensibly on our side. And they are reacting to people like Mike Waltz, who is the National Security Advisor, or who will be the National Security Advisor, Keith Kellogg, the three-star general who will be the envoy to Ukraine. When they see people like this, they go, oh my God, Donald Trump is reneging on his promise to wind down the Ukraine war. He's doing nothing but actually, fanning the flames, and he's allowing the neocons into his administration, and they will take over, and oh my God, everything will go to hell in a handbasket. So you see a lot of people online with those opinions, but again, I think they are overreacting. Donald Trump, in his first term, he often would surround himself with people who thought differently than he did. But ultimately, he would make his own decision. And some of that is that he does like the diversity of opinion. But I think the other part of it is that he has to work with the establishment at some level and give them something to grasp onto. So perhaps he picks Mike Waltz to be his NSA, but, and that will, make the people in the Pentagon, in the deep state, feel a little better, and perhaps give Trump a little space. But then ultimately, Trump can make his own decision and do what he wants. So again, I think it's for Trump, who he picks is part strategic, part of him negotiating with the deep state because they do have a say, and part of it is also a negotiation tactic with other leaders, and I'll get more into that later. But, again, his cabinet, if you look at his cabinet, you have people who have very diverse opinions on Ukraine. You have, Tulsi Gabbard, who would be the director of national intelligence should she get confirmed, who was very anti-Ukraine war. Same thing with RFK Jr., although as head of the, Health and Human Services, he won't be involved in foreign policy directly per se. So they're very dovish, against the Ukraine war. But then again, you have people like Keith Kellogg and Mike Waltz, who are very hawkish. And then you have Marco Rubio, who was establishment, but recently he has moved away from being so hawkish, and he actually voted against sending more money to Ukraine. So he's not quite far on that side anymore. And then, Pete Hegseth, fairly hawkish, but I don't think he's as ideological as, say, a Mike Waltz. I think as Secretary of Defense, he just wants to improve the military and enact Trump's agenda. So his personal opinions on, say, Ukraine or China, I don't think will factor in as much. But here are a couple of clips that got people concerned, and you see these on X, on YouTube, that got people worked up. And the first is comment by Mike Waltz concerning the continuity of the U.S. government. Here's what he said.
Jake Sullivan and I have had discussions. We've met. For our adversaries out there that think this is a time of opportunity, that they can play one administration off the other, they're wrong. And we are hand in glove. We are one team with the United States in this transition.
So he's saying, again, we're going to be working together, both sides, both administrations. There's only one country here, so you can't, play, us off each other. Is there a value in saying that to the rest of the world? Perhaps. And here is Keith Kellogg's comments about supporting Ukraine.
Bottom line, the Ukrainians want to fight. They don't want U.S. troops. They don't want NATO troops. All they want is equipment, and they're going to fight this to the end. It's very clear to them that this is a very aggressive Russia move. It's targeted on civilians. It's targeted on infrastructure.
This is an older
we went
clip,
out
by the way.
pretty far to the northeast. And we saw some absolute incredible destruction out there by the Russians. And it was targeted on infrastructure, it was targeted on hospitals, it was targeted on schools. In fact, the mayor of Kyiv told us later that this is genocide. And I think when we look at what's going to happen over there, I believe it's very important we get them the equipment to fight. Because I think now we're right on the cusp. And I think it's going to come out probably in just a couple of months when we get into the spring, into the summer, and then into the fall. This is going to be a fight to the end. The Ukrainians are not going to negotiate.
So he says here the Ukrainians are not going to negotiate, but in the future, he changes his tune here. You'll see it in a second.
Have no intention to negotiate. They want to eject Russian forces from Ukraine. I don't care if it's a Donbass. I don't care if it's Crimea. And they're committed to it. And I talked to a lot of government officials, military officials, civilians that are out there. It's a very committed nation. If anybody doubts their loyalty to Ukraine, they're badly mistaken. And again, as I said, I think it's a fight to the finish.
We're joined now by Lieutenant General Keith Kellogg. General, part of that report we just heard was that Zelensky wants permission from us to use American long-range weapons inside Russia. That would allow him to go to the negotiating table next year.
Now
You agree with that?
Right?
Yes, I do, Stuart, and thanks for having me. Look, this is how you fight a war. You fight it aggressively, and what the Ukrainians did was very smart. It was bold when they went into the Kursk region, because symbolically that's very important to the Russians. Remember, Kursk was the site of the most major battle, the tank battle in World War II that turned the tide against the Germans for the Russians. So when they went into Kursk, there was a real reason they did it. It was a smart reason. They moved into maneuver warfare versus attrition warfare. And of course they should be given the weapons. What we should say to the Ukrainians, we're going to give you more.
So that's Keith Kellogg, and he pretty much says exactly what every neocon in Washington, D.C. is saying about the Ukraine war. And as things change, he changes his tune to match what is popular at the time. So he's kind of, it's almost a joke, just watching them over time change their tune based on what's happening. And hey, Keith Kellogg, like everybody else from the neocon side, has been pretty much wrong about everything. So people, when Trump picked him, were like, why the hell are you picking Keith Kellogg? This guy is a clown. He's a neocon clown. And I understand that. I get that. But what is Trump's strategy? What is Trump's strategy? And Trump makes it pretty clear. He always wants to negotiate from strength, not weakness. So is that sensible? Does that make sense to have people around you who are pit bulls, so that when you approach Putin, when you approach Xi Jinping, when you approach anybody, that they go, wow, this guy is ready to go. If we want to fight, he'll fight. So maybe it's a strategy on Trump's part to have hawks around him for leverage to negotiate. And I'll prove it again here that might be the strategy. And here's Trump talking about John Bolton and what use John Bolton had by being such a over-the-top war hawk. Here's the clip.
He was great for me, though, for a period of time, because he was a nut job, and everybody, I could see his face get red with that stupid white mustache, and he'd be ready to explode. And this was good for me. I went to Kim Jong-un in North Korea. I took this moron with me, and he never said anything. But when Kim Jong-un saw him, he said, oh shit, I think the guy wants to go to war. So he was great for me to negotiate with. The same thing with Russia. You know, when Putin saw him, I'd be very nice. I'd say, "Hi, Vladimir, how you doing?" And then Putin's, 2 rows back, and he'd see that moron, and he'd say, "Holy shit, this guy wants to go to war with me." And I got a lot of what I wanted.
Okay, so that's the clip with Trump and Bolton pointing out that Bolton was essentially a negotiating tactic, having him there, because it made other people think that we were serious about going to war. Now, even if you're the biggest dove in the world, the biggest anti-Ukraine, anti-anything, completely anti-war, you do have to recognize that in order to negotiate and get your way, the people on the other side of the table have to perceive you as being strong. So if I were going to go negotiate with Putin, although I love this man, I would not want to have Ron Paul next to me, because Putin would look at Ron Paul and go, this guy's a non-interventionist. Maybe the U.S. is not as strong as as I think they are, and perhaps we can try to get a little more. So, do you really want to have doves around you when you're negotiating? I don't think so. So I think it's part of a strategy to negotiate. And here too is a clip from Rubio along those same lines.
In the case of Ukraine, who wants war? What he's talking about is he wants the war to end. Now, as a businessman, he's not going to tell you about his negotiating tactic to bring it to a close, but I don't understand why we would not want a war like that to end. Obviously, you don't have to be a fan of Vladimir Putin to want the war to end.
So there's Rubio. Again, like I said, he is moving more away from the hawkish side. He's saying, again, Trump is not going to say out loud, here's how I'm going to negotiate. He needs to have some ambiguity. And by having people like Tulsi around him, but then having Mike Waltz and Keith Kellogg, it's not clear what he plans to do. And I think that is strategic. So I'm not making any predictions about what he's going to do and what may happen. Perhaps Trump does escalate. I don't think it's going to happen. That's certainly possible, right? Theoretically. But what I'm saying is that we should not overreact to everything he says and does, because he wants to keep that ambiguity. He doesn't want things to be so obvious for our enemies to figure out. So all you people on X who are frothing at the mouth when he does something that you don't quite like, I think you're wasting your energy a bit. Calm down. Relax. You can disagree with something and say, I'm not a fan of that pick, but don't be apocalyptic about things. There's certain people online who I like a lot, and every small thing, the sky is falling, and they're losing their minds. Now, some of that is them, trying to get attention, but some of that is that's how they feel, and it's like, calm down, relax, let the process play out. Don't get too far ahead of yourself. But again, that's the way some people are. And just to make the point about the fact that we don't need to freak out, who is the person that we're ultimately negotiating with? That person is Vladimir Putin. And how was Vladimir Putin responded to A, the Trump's cabinet picks, and B, the use of long-range weapons? That's the person that matters, how he's responding to this. And what has he said? Well, I'm going to play a long clip here, about 3 minutes of Vladimir Putin, and I will read these subtitles. And he, it seems, is not very excited about what's going on, and he seems fairly relaxed and unconcerned. Not unconcerned, but he's not losing his mind about the weapons that we've allowed Ukraine to use. And as I suggested in my previous video, I think he's waiting till January 20th for the new administration, and he's not going to respond rashly and do anything that's going to really escalate the war. He's too smart for that. So here's what Putin himself has said in response to everything that's going on right now. We don't know what Mr. Trump and the current president discussed at their meeting. We don't know, and therefore we won't comment on it. It's impossible. There are different opinions. If the current President Biden believes that by escalating the situation in Ukraine, increasing the degree of confrontation, he is creating conditions for the future administration to easily get out of this situation, because the newly elected president will say, well, it wasn't me. These are people who have completely lost their minds. I have nothing to do with this. Let's talk. Of course, that's an option. It is possible that the current administration wants to create additional difficulties for the future one. That is possible, which is probably right. But as far as I can imagine, the newly elected president, he is a smart person and already quite experienced. It seems to me that he will find a solution, especially after he has passed such a serious test, let's say, as the fight to return to the White House. You know, I think that you as well were most struck not by the fact that absolutely uncivilized means of struggle were used against Trump, including attempted murder, and more than once, by the way. In my opinion, he's not safe now either. Unfortunately, there have been all sorts of different incidents in the history of the United States. But I think that he is an intelligent person, and I hope, cautious now, he understands all this. I was striking that during the attacks on him, during the fight against him, not only was he subjected to humiliating, unfounded procedures, legal charges, and so on, but they also attacked members of his family, his children. Even bandits don't do that here. When criminal groups fight amongst themselves, they don't touch women and children. They leave them alone. Men fight amongst themselves. But these guys attack Trump. You understand. This is so revolting that it once again emphasizes the entire decline of today's American political system. Nevertheless, this country is undoubtedly great, and we are ready for dialogue with the United States, including with the future administration. So, Vladimir says, why is Biden escalating with the weapons? There's different reasons why he might be doing that, because he's crazy or because he's trying to make things difficult for Trump. But he says Trump is a smart guy. He has been a victim of lawfare, of assassination attempts. It's horrible. They've gone after his family. But he's a smart guy, and we, Russia, are here ready to negotiate. So that's how Putin has responded to everything that's happened. Does he sound particularly worried? Is he freaking out that that Trump picked Keith Kellogg and Mike Waltz to be in his administration? No, he's saying, I'm ready to negotiate. Boy, Trump, they've done a lot of bad things to you. They've gone after you and your family, but you're a smart guy, you're resilient, and we are ready to move forward with your administration and have talk. So ultimately, it's how Putin responds to all this that really matters. So it doesn't seem that he's too worried. So for everybody out there freaking out about everything Trump says and does and who he picks, calm down. Clearly, Putin is ready to talk on January 20th, and he's looking for some sort of peaceful settlement. Now, will it happen? A lot of moving parts. We got Zelensky, we got the neocons, the establishment, the deep state, a lot of things going on there, but it's certainly possible, and let's not get too far ahead of ourselves in predicting what might happen, and let's not overreact to every little thing that Trump does. It's gonna, that's how Trump is. Everything is always, so spectacular. That's how he always gets a reaction from people. You got to learn how to just stay steady with what he does and not get suckered into his his energy, which is very capable of getting people all excited. So I think things will turn out okay. That's my optimism. Because at this point, I mean, what more can we do to escalate in Ukraine other than, start firing, missiles at Moscow? So I think the neocons play their hand. They push as hard as they could. I don't think they were successful in provoking Putin, and I think they are at the end of the road because there's not much left they can do, and they only have 6 weeks left before Trump takes office. So they are running out of time, but like I say in all my videos, never put anything past the people in power right now because they are maniacs, and nothing they do surprises me, unfortunately. So hopefully these next 6 weeks, nothing too crazy happens, but we'll just have to wait and see. Well, that's it for now. If you're new to my channel, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.